Did anyone see this coming? Trump's victorious return as VP Kamala Harris signals a Democratic concession is shaking up the nation. But how will this impact America's direction? Let's break it all down. In an unexpected twist, former President Donald Trump pulled off a major political comeback, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris and securing a second term in the White House. Going into Election Day, the race was extremely tight, with both candidates neck and neck in polls. It seemed like anyone's game, but as the night unfolded, it became clear that Trump's momentum was unstoppable. His supporters were energized, while Harris's team, gathered at Howard University, was left in disbelief as the results rolled in. The stage was set for a dramatic conclusion to an election season that had kept everyone on edge. Trump's victory didn't just come in the form of winning the presidency. It was also a massive success for the Republican Party across the board. As the night progressed, Republicans also took control of the Senate, flipping the upper chamber after 4 years of Democratic dominance. Meanwhile, Democrats were hoping to replicate their success in the House of Representatives, but the results were still up in the air, leaving many to wonder how the final balance of power would shape up in Washington. Going into the final stretch of the campaign, both candidates focused their energies on key battleground states, where the election would be decided. Trump spent a lot of time in the Sun Belt states like Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina holding rallies and appealing to voters who felt left behind by the economic changes in recent years. Meanwhile, Harris stuck to the traditional blue wall states Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, hoping to maintain the Democratic stronghold in these crucial regions. As the results began to trickle in on election night, it quickly became clear that Trump had emerged victorious in these battlegrounds. By 6 morning, it was evident that Trump had reached the magic number of 270 electoral votes, securing the presidency and pushing Harris's chances further out of reach. What made Trump's victory even more surprising was that his performance exceeded all expectations. The polls had indicated a close race, but Trump's margins in key states, especially in Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, were much larger than predicted. These states, which had been tight in both 2016 and 2020, showed a noticeable shift, with Trump doing far better than in previous elections. Early Wednesday morning, as more votes were counted, it even looked like Trump might win the national popular vote, a rare feat for a Republican candidate in recent decades. One of the most notable aspects of this election was the shifting demographic landscape. Throughout the campaign, the GOP had been focused on increasing its appeal to minority voters, especially Black and Latino communities. While many had written off Trump's chances of making inroads with these groups, the 2024 results told a different story. Exit polls showed Trump had performed notably better with Black and Latino voters than in previous years. In Georgia and North Carolina, Trump's share of the Black male vote jumped significantly, reaching around 20%, a sharp increase from his 2020 performance. He also made impressive gains among Latino men, even leading Harris among this group nationally. This was a huge victory for Trump and the Republican Party, which had spent years trying to diversify its voter base. Trump's performance in Wisconsin was the final nail in the coffin. Winning the state not only gave him 276 electoral votes, surpassing the 270 needed to win, but it also put him on track to secure the popular vote for the first time in 2 decades. This was a huge achievement for Trump, and it set the stage for what would be a hard-fought victory speech. In his victory speech, delivered in Florida, Trump thanked his supporters and promised to deliver a strong, safe, and prosperous America. "I will not rest until we deliver the America our children deserve," Trump declared, addressing a crowd that was clearly elated by his win. It was a moment of triumph for a candidate who had faced significant legal and political challenges leading up to the election. His speech, however, left the question hanging in the air. How would the country move forward with Trump back in power? Meanwhile, the Harris campaign was still reeling from the loss. While there was no official concession speech from Harris at the time, her team had promised that she would address her supporters soon. At the time, Harris had secured 223 electoral votes, but the writing was on the wall. The vice president's campaign, despite massive fundraising efforts, simply couldn't close the deal. She had raised $1 billion in the final months of the race. But as it turned out, money wasn't the deciding factor in this election. Harris's campaign had focused heavily on expanding the base, particularly in the blue wall states, but it didn't connect with enough voters in key battlegrounds. While the presidential race took center stage, Republicans were also having a strong night in Congress. The GOP flipped control of the Senate, gaining ground in crucial races that had Democrats worried. The first sign of Republican success came early when West Virginia's Gov. Jim Justice easily defeated Democrat Glenn Elliott in the race for the Senate seat vacated by Joe Manchin. Then, in Ohio, Senator Sherrod Brown lost his re-election bid to Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. The GOP continued its momentum in Nebraska, where Senator Deb Fischer defeated independent challenger Dan Osborne. These victories were critical for the Republicans, who now controlled the Senate and could make it easier for a second Trump administration to confirm judges and cabinet officials. As the night wore on, it became clear that Harris's chances of winning were slipping away. She had planned to address her supporters at Howard University, where she had studied, but as the results came in, it was apparent that her campaign had failed to secure the victory. Her team, however, remained optimistic, with campaign co-chair Cedric Richmond telling the press that they would continue to fight for every vote. But it was evident that Harris was facing a tough road ahead, and Trump's victory was all but assured. Looking back, this election had its roots in an unexpected twist earlier in the year. In July, President Joe Biden had dropped out of the race after a disastrous debate performance against Trump, leaving many Democrats questioning his ability to win. After Biden's withdrawal, he endorsed Harris as his successor, and Democratic leaders and donors quickly rallied behind her. Harris was formally nominated as the Democratic candidate at the Democratic National Convention in August, but her campaign ended up being one of the shortest in modern history, lasting just 3 months before Election Day. Trump's campaign, on the other hand, was chaotic but effective. Despite being convicted of 34 felonies earlier in the year and making a series of controversial statements, he managed to rally a significant portion of the electorate behind his message. Trump's campaign focused on promises to deport millions of unauthorized immigrants, impose tariffs on imports, and roll back environmental protections. His rhetoric was polarizing, but it resonated with voters who were disillusioned with the political establishment. But what really made Trump's comeback possible? Influential figures like Elon Musk, who had formally endorsed Trump after an assassination attempt on him in July, played a huge role in Trump's success. He donated over $100 million to the campaign and used his platform, X, to promote Trump's message. Along with Musk's America PAC, groups like Turning Point Action were crucial in driving Trump's canvassing efforts in battleground states like Michigan, Arizona, and Wisconsin. Trump also benefited from endorsements from social media influencers like Jake Paul and Joe Rogan, who helped energize young voters. Paul, a YouTube star with over 20 million subscribers, and Rogan, the host of the most popular podcast in the US, used their massive platforms to rally support for Trump in the final stretch of the campaign. Their influence played a significant role in boosting Trump's appeal to a younger demographic that had previously been hesitant to support the Republican Party. But the real story of the election was the shifting voter demographics. Polls had suggested that women, particularly senior and independent voters, were leaning toward Harris, especially after the Supreme Court's decision to overturn federal abortion rights. In the end, Republicans regained control of the Senate, which would make it easier for a second Trump administration to confirm judges and cabinet members. While the results in the House of Representatives were still undecided, the GOP had already secured a major win that would shape the next 4 years of American politics. And the question on everyone's mind was, what would America look like under Trump's second term? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates.